Hi, and welcome to Arkham. Here we will summon forth the starry wisdom, and he will rain apocalypse down upon. Is that the fence? I gotta go.
So here we're taking a look at Madness at Midnight. Now in this game, players will be running their own cult, trying to bring forth their particular elder god into this world to bring about the end of the world. In doing so, players will not only have to contend with other cults in the city, but also with an investigating team that is trying to stop them. The game continues until a player has reached 13 points, at which point you continue that final round, and then whoever has the most points is the winner. The game itself, as I said, is played over a series of rounds, with each round being divided into 4 phases. The phases are sunrise, day, twilight, and midnight. Now in the first round of the game, you actually don't do the sunrise phase, but I'm going to go through it anyway, but it will make more sense to you when we get to the end. The first thing that will happen is the first player token will be passed, and then we'll check to see if any plots were claimed. If no plots were claimed during this round, meaning there's still 3 here, then you'll take the one from the farthest side out and you'll slide these over and bring out another one. If there had already been some removed, then we would just fill in those spaces. Anything that was exhausted in the previous round would now be refreshed. We would flip the investigators if they had been defeated during the previous round. You would move any save dice back to become available to you, and you would add an investigating token here if there were none in the space. The last thing we need to do is see if any of these, if the locations flip. And in doing so, you're just going to roll a d6, and on a 1, 2, or 3, they stay the same. On a 4, 5, or 6, they all flip. Now, you'll notice here is there are 2 sides to each of them. There's a full moon and there is a crescent moon, and that will change which actions are available at those locations during the current round. Next up, we're going to move into the day phase. Now, this is where the bulk of the game happens. Players will be taking their actions. The first thing, however, that's going to happen is that players are going to all roll their dice simultaneously. When you do this, any dice that do not show this investigator icon are kept as they are. But starting with the first player, for each investigating icon that you've rolled, you must add a token to the investigating pool, and you must move this investigator token 1 space along the path. Then you re-roll any of these dice, and if you roll it again, you repeat that until you have no longer any investigating tokens. That'll continue around the board until all players have done so. At this point, play will go around with each player making 1 action until everyone has passed. Pass is an action. However, if you pass, you are out for the remainder of that round. The actions that you can do are to spend 1 of your dice, you can save a die, you can use any cards or anything that say action on them, or you can simply pass it. At the start of your turn, however, you do have an option to re-roll 1 or more of your die. And in doing so, what you need to do first is move your token up 1 on the madness track, and that allows you to re-roll any number of dice. You do need to keep in mind, however, the same rules that applied earlier about investigator tokens, investigator icons still applies here. So if I rolled this, I would need to place 1, move them, and re-roll it again. You can do that any number of times until you're ready, but there is a bit of a risk, obviously, with the investigators. The dice themselves have a few different icons on them, and we have a fight icon, and that allows me to place that die anywhere on the board that there is a fight symbol. And that means that during the next phase, that player would be the person to initiate combat. The next type of thing that you can have on a die is a Mythos symbol. Now, the Mythos symbol is just a resource within the game, and there are several things that'll tell you need to spend Mythos. The next ones that we have are a split, and they're either a hand or a foot. Now they are dual purpose, but you have to use them for one or the other. The hand allows you to place it out anywhere on the board that you see that symbol and take the associated action. The foot, on the other hand, has a number in addition, such as this one, which shows a 3. Now, what that does is that will grant you 3 movement activations. Now, it's very important to not confuse that with movement points. A single movement activation simply means that you can do the movement of one of your particular meeples, taking its full movement if you wish. So in the case of this Grand Witch, it has a move of 1. So 1 activation would mean 1 move. But this Lesser Night Gaunt over here has a move of 3. So 1 movement activation actually means 3 movement points. You can move anywhere on the board along these white lines. You can also spend all of the movement points to come back from this dead box back to your board, and you can spend 1 movement point to move from your board out to anywhere on the board that has the meeple symbol for cultists. Once all players have passed, that phase will end and we'll move into the Twilight Phase. Now the first thing that's going to happen is the investigators are going to get to strike. The first thing you will check for the investigator strike is how many tokens are here. If the number of tokens are here that they're required to seal, such as in a 2-player game 6, then you simply discard that number of tokens and place an elder sign in the investigator's current location, sealing off that from mystical energies. But most importantly, it will also kill any cultists who are currently there and move them to the dead box. However, if they do not have the required number of tokens and there are cultists where they are, you'll flip one of these over randomly and that will set a fight value for them. At this point, players in that location in player order will need to battle them. And in doing so, they'll just add up their fight value of what they have, roll that number of dice, and on a 5 or 6, they get a hit and they're trying to match this number to defeat the investigators. Keep in mind here that the investigators fight all cults that are there regardless of whether or not a cult defeats them. The only reason that this matters is for in the later phase for control and domination, players cannot do that if the investigators are currently undefeated. After this, we will go and resolve any cult fights, and cult fights are a little similar in that each player will add up their fight value and they will roll against each other. Though this happens simultaneously unless somebody has ambush, which allows them to do their damage first. And it's the same rules unless you have something changing it that a 5 or 6 will cause a hit. One thing I didn't mention during the investigator fight, and I'm going to mention here, is that a 6 always explodes. So it counts as a hit, and then you roll it again. So you can get multiple explodes if you keep rolling 6s. The damage is assigned by the defender, and you have to assign it. You can't try to game it. You can't try to do, so let's say you had somebody out here who has a life value of 2 and you were taking 2 damage. You can't do 1 here and 1 here, thus only killing 1. You would have to apply it to the one that has the 2 if you were going to apply it to him. After we've resolved all this, we're going to move into the Midnight Phase. And the first thing we're going to do is check for control and dominance. Control simply means that you have the most number of cultists present, and dominance means that you are the only person present. And that's going to give you different things depending on the location, and you can just look through these. This one, for example, if you control this location, you get to draw an item. At this point, players then can choose to score if they have an active ceremony that they have previously activated, and you can only have one of them active at any given time. And then we're going to see in player order if you can do a plot. So starting with the first player, if they can meet one of these requirements, they can take that and score the associated victory points. If not, it goes to the next player, and that goes round and round until either all players have passed or there are no more of these here for that round. At this point, we go back to the beginning, to the sunrise phase, and begin again. A couple of quick points that I should mention to you real quick is that each player does have a special ability that applies to them, and you'll see here on the Starry Wisdom that if their cult leader is in a battle, they can pay a mythos to give all their cultists in battle the ambush ability. And that's different for each player. Also, you can upgrade. And upgrades happen at certain points in the game unless something is giving you the ability. The first time a player hits 3 victory points, no matter who it is, all players get to go into their deck and choose an upgrade. For example, the blue player here could decide to upgrade their Lesser Night Gaunt into a Greater Night Gaunt, and it would go on the player board and would now upgrade their monster. That will also happen again at 6 and at 9. There are items in the game such as spells, artifacts, and common items, and I'm just going to show you a couple of these real quick. This is a artifact, and it is not an action. It is you discard to move one of your cultists from the dead box to each of the 4 locations marked with a cultist symbol. When you discard, though, it always goes to the graveyard face down, because whenever you do this grave robbing action, you're going to be drawing from the bottom, essentially digging up people and seeing what they have. Here we have an example of a common item, which allows you to discard to re-roll 1 or more of your action dice. Here we have a spell. Now you'll notice the spell says action. That means you have to use your action to use it. And it allows you to discard 1 or more of your minions from one location to any other location. Another thing to mention within the game is there are these forbidden lore tokens, and you can get them by going to that particular spot. And I didn't mention that any of these hand symbols that have colors can only be placed by that particular player. Examples of these are such as this one, which allows you to basically spend it as an action die. You have this one that gives you a Mythos resource, and let's say this one that allows you to change one of your die to another face. Again, once a player hits 13 points or more, that round is finished and whoever has the most points wins. However, there is one other way the game can end. If the investigators ever place their 3rd elder sign out on the board, the game also ends at that point, and the player who is currently in last place on the scoring track is the winner. So that's a look at Madness at Midnight. Now, I did go into this game blind, and not blind in the way I hadn't played it, because that's how I normally go into a game. I wasn't as blind in terms of I'd never heard of the game. I bought this game solely based on 2 things. One of the co-designers was Richard Launius, one of my favorite game designers, and the other thing being that it was in the Lovecraft mythos, so I figured what did I have to lose? Now, if you expect Arkham Horror, Eldritch Horror, Elder Sign, that is not what you're going to get here. This is a Euro game. This is an area control game. This is a worker placement game. And it really works. I really enjoyed this game. But I will say that I did have one major gripe with this game, and that is the rule book. Now, it lays everything out, and you can learn the game from it, but even for me, that was a challenge. And there is an extensive FAQ on BGG that can be really helpful, and I really recommend printing it before you play this game the first time. But it's the fact that the rulebook felt like they cut corners. It feels like they just left things out to save pages. One thing in particular was those forbidden lore tokens. They should have had something in the book that explained what each of them were and how they work, because it kept coming up with each group I played it with. And I'm not a big fan of when you kind of have to make judgment calls or maybe look things up on FAQs the first time you're playing a game. The artwork in the game is pretty darn good. It's not amazing, but it's not terrible. I did take issue in a few spots with it. The item cards themselves seem a little bland and out of place, and I couldn't figure out why exactly. I think it might just be the font on them. But the main thing was the forbidden lore tokens. Again, they're just boring, and they look kind of clip arty on the back, and they just seem really out of place within the game. Now, do they break the game? Do they make the game unenjoyable? Absolutely not. I just wish they'd made them a little look nicer within the theme of the game. The game itself really does feel like you're running your own cult within the city and trying to bring around your apocalypse, and you're fighting these rival cults, and you're worried about the investigators, and everything gels really well. The other thing I really enjoyed is I enjoyed the fact that while there is no true catch-up mechanism in the game, the person who's lagging way behind has the option to try to work that push your luck with the dice and actually maybe give the investigators those 3 elder signs and thus flip the entire game and take the victory away from the leader. And I really enjoyed that. There are a few things in the game that are in it and they work, but I found that in every play, people just ignored them. And the one glaring thing here is the variable player powers. Each cult has its own special unique power, but I found that in every game, they just got ignored. Maybe one person might use it once, but in general, people just kind of forgot they were there. And so that can be an issue. I did enjoy the flipping of the tiles on the locations. I just worry that because it's a D6 roll, there might be a game where statistically just nothing flips ever, and that might seem a little boring, especially if it happens in your first play. However, it does lend itself to a lot of replayability because it's constantly changing, and even round to round, if it flips, you might have been planning something in the next round, and now that's all changed. And so that really worked out well. The meeples themselves are really nice. I like that they took the time to do different meeples and that each player got their own specific monster meeple, and it's a very nice touch. I do, however, wish that the investigator token had been a meeple of some sort itself, as it actually can get really lost on the artwork of the board, and since you're having to move it when you do those icons on the dice, it can get lost, and that can slow things down a little if you're looking to figure out where it is. All in all, I really enjoyed this game. I found it to be very thematic, and that's a nice touch in a Euro game. It definitely gives me the feeling that I'm looking for in a Lovecraft game, and it gives me the choices and the strategy that I enjoy in a Euro game. If you love Lovecraft games, but your preference really in gaming is more towards the Euro side, this game is definitely worth a look. I hope you've enjoyed this look at Madness at Midnight, and I look forward to seeing you guys next time.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews, as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find other great shows at Dicetowernetwork.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock. Check them out at CoolStuffInc.com.